Hello, everybody. I think everybody's joining us from the waiting room. It's lovely to see you. Please do say hello in the webinar chat. We're going to wait for a few more people to come along in the next couple of minutes. So just relax, grab a cup of tea or some water. It's very hot today, and wherever you are. Greetings, says Evie. Hello, Evie. Always one of the most welcoming members of the studio. We've got some familiar faces, actually. I'm just looking at the list of attendees. James, how are you, mate?
I'm good. It's early doors. Got the coffee. I'm already thinking I need to have another 5 coffees.
I know. What time is it there?
It is 4 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, so I didn't realize it was that early. Well, in that case, I think we very much appreciate you being here, James. Next time, let's program it for a little bit later. But we've had a lot of people interested in this chat, so I'm really looking forward to diving in and talking about your new book, which you're going to give away a copy of, aren't you, to the best question?
Yeah, it's got to be a good, provocative, a real mind bender of a question that we can't answer.
Okay, that's brilliant. So people are trickling in. Welcome everybody if you've just joined. If you just missed this, James is very generously joining us at 4 in the morning with lots of coffee. So let's be quiet and gentle with him, unless you're a morning. Are you a morning person?
No. And when my wife found out that I was going to be getting up, 3:30 to come and do a phone call,
You
her
can you can say. I thought you were based in London.
well, I will be based in London in about 4 weeks. So,
Okay.
it's just a small like shadow of a mistake. But she was very supportive and said, "Oh, you're doing a talk. Well done. You should sleep in one of the kids' rooms."
Oh, okay. Isn't that what happens to most married couples later in life, though? We all sleep in separate rooms.
I'm still a young gun, so I shouldn't like. It's still a surprise to me. I'm only
Oh
16.
well, you've got all that to come. It's great. It's great. It's the snoring that does it, I think, on either side. Welcome if you've just joined us. Thank you so much for coming along. I think we're just gonna get started. So we're joined today by the wonderful James Hurst, who, for a little bit of transparency, I've met before. We've had a nice chat before for Creative Boom. And the topic of discussion today is weird the normal, normal the weird. And you want to be talking about using design to design change. And it's all based around your new book, which we'll be giving away a copy of. To the best questions. So folks, look at the bottom of your Zoom. You will see a Q&A box. Pop that open and think of what did you say the winner was going to be? A really kind of quirky.
Yeah, now I'm really regretting saying that. Just the
No
question I
pressure.
have the answer to.
No
Um,
press, no press, just best question. James will decide the winner and we'll announce that at the end. So, in the meantime, James, if you want to introduce yourself, and then I think you've got a really nice presentation for us, so I can just quietly go into the background and drink my cup of tea.
Perfect. Well, first of all, Katie, thank you so much for having me. The studio crew, thanks for bearing with this. Was to go through this and wanting to come along and listen to this. I wrote this book. It's a very, very little book. Um, and this is the second edition of the book, which for some reason I always mention, which goes to show that I've got some sort of social anxiety about letting people know that I've written 2 editions of a book. And the first edition of the book was me trying to show how I build brands. I've been working in the world of building brands for my whole career, and the first edition of the book were a series of exercises that help people ask dumb questions to get to smart answers, or that I thought were smart answers, to build a brand. Someone who I know and love really dearly. I sent him a copy of the book, and I was really excited to get his feedback. And he phoned me up and he was like, "James, your book's rubbish." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, it's not really a book, it's just a series of workshop exercises, but you've always got a story to tell. Like, put the stories in a book. That's a book, like not a series of workshop exercises." So this second edition is a really, really fun thing where I just recorded myself giving the workshop exercises, and then the stories that I would tell were the things that I would start to put into the actual book and the structure of the book. So um That same person has since phoned me up and said that the stories are a bit too weird and that they go off in different directions. So he's a very, very exacting person to try and get a good thing out of. But I would love to hear if I send you a copy, would love to hear if you think it's worth the stories, if the stories are worth something, or if you wish that they were just a bunch of workshop exercises.
Are you going to sign it as well? I think you should.
Yeah, I'll write whatever the question is that wins. I'll write a thoughtful answer in the book.
Fabulous. Okay. Now I'll let you crack on. Have you got a nice sort of presentation to bring up?
Do it.
Brill.
All right, I'm sharing my little screen. Let's do it. Okay, so I'm going to start with a really, really basic premise. This is definitely a talk about a book, but it's also not a talk about a book. I'm going to set a bit of a challenge because now in my opinion, we're not short on ideas. I think that we're just short on what do I think we're short on? I think we're short on intention. So I've tried to when Katie and I started to talk about me doing a talk about the book, it made me think at a meta level, why did I even write this book? Like, what was the whole purpose of it? Why did I bother doing it? So, and over the course of the last few days, once I was putting this together, it made me realize I don't think it is a talk about a book. I think it's a talk about me rethinking how to use design, not how to make things look good necessarily, but how to make things mean something. So, if that premise makes sense, let's talk on about the actual like subject of this talk. Oh, why is it not letting me click? Okay, weirding the normal, normaling the weird. Uh, it's weird. I think I just really love the wordplay. It's the real thing. But the book's called Use Design, Design Change. I think I like sentences that flip halfway through for some reason. But for me, it's not just a cheeky phrase. It's also a lens that I use all the time. I can't remember when, a little while ago, I was asked to do something, and I put down what I'd done over the last 20 odd years of doing what I do. And I realized I've done two things. I've either made weird stuff normal or I've made normal stuff weird. And for me, every decision that we make involves some sort of aesthetic choice. Does it need to feel new and unexpected, or am I taking something that's really, really new and unexpected, and my job is to make it feel familiar and safe? I've got to work with some really, really smart design thinkers. I know there are going to be lots of them here. And I think that that's where we should all begin. I think we should always start with that really, really simple question. It's not just about what we're making, but what we want people to feel when they meet or they get introduced to the thing that we're making. So in the first chapter of the book, it's called Launch. I start to unpack how and why you should, and the different ways you can start to define that. Are you making something that's normal, or are you making something that's weird? I want to address a big hairy thing that I bump into all the time. It's really, really noisy. There's almost like this new sort of pseudo creative class that sort of popped up in different places. I'm sure that you know them. I've certainly seen a lot of them. They live in my feeds. Once we're here for the studio, I see them on LinkedIn. The sort of the broetry. I know. I'm assuming they wear Patagonia vests, maybe ironically or unironically. I don't know. But they've all got one thing in common. They've decided that this is the end of creativity. This is the end of creative agencies because they've discovered some ChatGPT prompt and it's going to guarantee to write a million things. And it's horrible. And I don't think it's true. Uh, I think that creativity, it's not being automated and all the stuff that we use AI for, in my experience and in my opinion, it's being invited back to the table. AI is great at looking back. It's really, really good at deductive thinking. But real creativity, that's when we look forward. It's when we feel something. It's when we notice something that isn't obvious. And that's the stuff that human beings do. We're inductive thinkers. And the good news I think that there are more people looking for creative solutions. There are more people inviting people into rooms to talk to creative people to work out what do we do with our branding? What do we do with this piece of technology? What do we do with sustainability? What do we do with culture? And I think, in my humble opinion, that there are more problems to solve and there are more places for design to shine. And I say that as someone who's been building a thing called Rogue School, where I teach a course on how to use AI and how to use AI to build aesthetic intelligence, but intentionally not to replace creativity, but to extend it, to deepen our way of seeing so that we can design something that the world actually needs. So you'll have seen them, those LinkedIn monsters. They say we'll give you 10x agency savings if you just drop an emoji in the comments. This is my silent protest. Let's just not engage. I don't share. I just design better things instead. In my opinion, that's a smarter way to move through life. All right. Without moving past that, uh, what do you call it? PSA. Those things in monsters think design is decoration, and I am so thrilled that they do because that great misunderstanding, treating design like an aesthetic cherry on top, is, as I'm sure you will get to know in the next sort of half an hour, is the opposite of what I think. I'm the antithesis of that. I'm going to spend the next few minutes trying to convince you, if you need convincing, that design is the whole damn cake. It's where values become visible. It's where aesthetic intelligence means knowing the difference between decoration and direction. Design is the first move, not something that we do right at the end of the process. This is one of my favorite products from the last few years. It's called the Light Phone. It is deliberately not smart. It is so wonderfully dumb. And that's the point of it. It's a total rejection and of all the distractions and all the stuff that goes on our smartphones. And it's a reminder that restraint, it is such a radical design decision. Sometimes designing less, that's how I think people say more. And it's because of that that the flip side is design is how you declare who you are without needing to say something. It's the value statement in visual form. It's your tone of voice. It's the words that are spoken. It's the because people don't just trust brands to say the right thing. They trust the brands who actually do the right thing. And so designer's declaration is the key thing for the way that I think about design. And there's a big tension, short-term attention versus long-term intention. Campaigns, we all love working on a campaign. They get remembered, people talk about them, they reflect a moment in time. That's when we as creative people get to shape culture, not by making noise, but we get to make something by meaning when we start to actually like lean into this other word, the C word, culture. So the big idea that I try to hammer home relentlessly in this little book is campaigns say things, but culture proves them. Brands, they can say whatever they want, but it's the culture that is going to stand the test of time. So I've pulled together a bunch of different examples of people that are doing that, in my opinion, excellently. Unilever, they have made such an amazing mark in the world. I don't think this is an ad. It's a slide in the street. They didn't just say play outside. They built it into cities. Design, it's not like whispering. It's playing loud and public. And I think it's just so weird and wonderful. They took a billboard space and put a slide on it. And it wasn't just a slide. They used the spaces to build goalposts. They have basketball hoops. They've got so many different ways of turning passive space into permission. Design isn't decoration. This is an example where it's a real invitation to break the rules. And by doing that, in my opinion, just create real joy across Turkey. And there are so many great ways of brands that are telling stories. So I'm going to whiz through a whole bunch of the stories. The book, as the winner of the best question is undoubtedly going to find out, is full of stories where I've tried to learn from by mimicry, activism, stuff that I think is interesting, and what are the things that we can learn from that to build meaningful brands. But that book, it wasn't the finish line for me. That book was just a moment in time. I've always taken notes, always journaled, always tried to capture those things. And it's that curiosity that has always meant design is a bit of a verb for me. So these stories, there are some refresh stories. There are a couple of these stories in the book, but good design, it's all around us. And I'm going to rattle through them really quickly because I've just seen the time. All right, come on. Stella McCartney, making luxury circular stuff for ages. Fashion, that's beautiful. But Sainsbury's maybe a tiny bit less glamorous, but I think that is maybe more vital as well. They're reducing food waste with real tools, real people. So this is design not being a campaign, but being the infrastructure around the stuff that's going on. Tom's, one pair bought, one pair given. The North Face, the ability for them to go around and talk about their actions with Close the Loop. It's a brand, but it's a behavior. So design isn't about helping people. Design isn't about just saying something, but it's about helping people form real habits. And I think Tom's North Face are such leaders in that. Design, it doesn't stop at packaging. It's how we show up in the world. It could be about pulling plastic from rivers, ocean cleanup, absolutely inspiring community, or building community through outdoor voices who are always leading the way, I think, in that world. But moving from branding something to building something in a movement or in a community is such an important moment that we should all grab hold of. REI, a massive, massive store over here in America, is a big camping shop. And it closes on Black Friday, and they've done that for years. And it's not marketing, it's a real act of rebellion. Rothy's, they turn wasteware that the people might have, and they turn them into new products. they've taken the idea of rebellion as a real way to build relevance, and I think that's such an important principle for us to hold on to. I have grown up, and I'm sure lots of us have grown up seeing those innocent bottles with the knitted hats as we get into autumn. And I think that, and I can't remember what the money is now, but they used to, I think it was 20p or 25p, maybe it's gone up a bit more now. But that for every single one of those bottles with a knitted hat that's sold, a donation is given to AGK. And I think that that is such an important way of showing how you can leverage a brand, and seeing other brands like IKEA set up their sort of second life circular hubs are such great examples where design is not this whimsical idea, but it's this ability to introduce circular thinking, these small, weird signals that signal really big shifts in the way that the world is going, and I think represent the values that we hold on to. Transparency is accountability. They're not just policies, they're design strategies. Everlane, big fashion brand over here in America. I think they're in the UK now, but I can't remember. They don't just sell clothes, they show you exactly what they cost to make the fabric, the labor, the transport, the whole story. It's on the labels inside of the t-shirts. Or Etsy, they've started to bake carbon offsetting into the transaction. It's not something they try and get you to pay more of, it's just part of how it works. 10 years ago, these would have been such radical ideas, but now it's the expectation, it's the baseline. So, what we used to call weird, now that's normal, and it builds trust, it aligns values, it's part of the aesthetic. So, that's what I mean when I talk about aesthetic intelligence a lot in the. I'm going to stop holding the book, but in the book. It's not just how something looks, it's what we reveal by the stories we tell, it's how we use design to tell those stories. Seventh generation, they're not ads, they're acts. Seventh generation, they don't just sell soap, they're lobbying Congress to pass environmental legislation. Swell, they don't just sell reusable bottles, they're actively fighting single-use culture. The wild thing, I think this used to be fringe, on the fringes, but now it's the mainstream, it's the stuff at the center, and I think that's so powerful. One of my favorite lessons I've learned in the process of writing the book, it create stories people can live in, because the best brands don't just tell stories, they create worlds. They create the places we live inside, beliefs that we can align with. Design is not just something we wrap over the top of it, it's a system, it's a structure, and it's a narrative architecture that holds culture, in my opinion, in place. The most effective work, it doesn't look like marketing. It looks like, in my opinion, activism or subversion or satire, because that's what makes it relevant, because it's rebellious. This is not about being edgy, it's about having real courage and often a bit of clarity. And of course, there are the big brands that people hold up all the time, Ben and Jerry's, Patagonia, sometimes Nike, maybe. But these brands don't wait for the moment, they declare their place in those moments whenever they can. I grew up with this. It was one of my earliest design educations, Adbusters. It wasn't because I went to the Brighton Art School. It wasn't because it was in the curriculum, but it was in my hands all the time. The covers, they shouted. They didn't sell products, but I found them so exciting because they were challenging power. Calais Lassan, who was the editor, I think he's still the editor. He taught me through that magazine that design, it could be a protest. A cover could be an act of real defiance. A design could have meaning, not just the marketing, but real meaning. And that stayed with me. And it shaped much of what I think about the role of design and the role of designers in the world. I run a meetup here in San Francisco, and when I get back to London, I'll be bringing it back over to London. It's called First Things Club, and that's in honor of Ken Garland's First Things Manifesto, which really reminds us about what matters most in design and who we're really designing for. One of Adbuster's products that they launched, this thing, the Black Spot, the unswisher, it was Calais', it was a physical process. If Nike had the swoosh, this was the unswoosh, and they sort of leveraged that in everything that they were doing. It was made from recycled tire soles, hemp. They were more than this ecological choice. They sort of carried this real message. If you wore them, you're about independence, rebellion, transparency. And it was one of the first moments that I remember of seeing how somebody could turn a product into a protest, or how you could turn consumerism into a critique of consumerism. It was really, really powerful. And my favorite, I've got a big stack of Airbusters over there. I was going to bring the actual copy, but I love this cover. It says everything by choosing to say nothing. It was about censorship, but it was also about reclaiming attention. You didn't need to have to say everything. It was the refusal to say something that I think was so disruptive in the way that they did. Fast forward a few years, and we have moments like this. Colin Kaepernick, he didn't need a brief. He didn't have a media team. He didn't have someone telling him what he should do. He just had real conviction. He had a silent gesture, one knee, and that has become such a global symbol. It's shifted culture, and it shows the power of aesthetic resistance. It's such a simple act, like what a simple thing to do, but the meaning couldn't be more seismic. Now, this is where Nike stepped in, not as a creator, but as an amplifier of that moment. They saw the weight of Kaepernick's protest and chose to stand with it. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. What an amazing line. And it wasn't copywriting, that was reframing the act of Collins' act as a brand value. And it worked so well because they didn't water it down. They understood their role. It wasn't a product moment. This was a cultural moment. And there are so many examples of brands doing this. I've gone for the extremes. I think Hell's Angels, they know what so many great brands know. Identity, it's everything. But the twist with Harley Davidson is there was a real stigma about being a bike rider, about being a Harley Davidson bike rider. They didn't fight it. They leaned into it. They created a HOG, HOG, the Harley Owners Group, and it formalized their community. It created this sort of safety net for the community, and they really owned the culture that it's inspired. And I think that is the power of aesthetic intelligence. It's turning those underground moments, that symbolism, into real brand ownership, and it's making the things that might start out as rebellion become things like loyalty, which is very much what's happened for Harley Davidson. Weird
James,
because all
James,
because
sorry to interrupt your flow, my love. You can slow down if a little bit if you like, because we do have time. We have until 1 o'clock if we need it. So
oh,
just slow,
you. All right.
slow. We can have a little break as well. Have a bit more of your coffee.
All right, friends. I'm gonna go for a hot minute. All right, cool.
No, it's great. It's my fault, folks. It's I said we haven't got much time, so and obviously James has a lot to say, so please do continue. It's really fascinating. Thank you.
I've got I kept on using the words verbal diarrhea in something that I was talking about the other day, and someone said, call it a verbal fountain. It's very unpleasant hearing you say diarrhea so often. Okie dokie, friends. I'll slow down a bit. So, design, it doesn't need to be grand. It just has to be really, really clear. It's not about scale. This in particular, actually, that I'm about to talk about, it wasn't about scale. It was about a really clear signal. The right design at the right moment, it can catalyze a movement. Whoa, whoa, whoa! I feel like we should have a Greta Thunberg klaxon. I think Greta's sign, that the cardboard, the simplicity of it, the clarity, her courage. I think that is design as declaration. That statement, for me, that's what it really, really looks like. There wasn't a creative director. There weren't people sitting around testing the messages out. There weren't board meetings. She didn't go through some double diamond design process. She just has real concern, and she had, importantly, the courage to act. She has done so much to shine a light where it needs to be shone, in my opinion. And if we talk about impact that people have, she has had impact. I don't know where I found this funny image, but it captures some of the stories that have she's become so synonymous with and associated with. It's not the stuff that gets measured in a campaign metric, but it's the stuff that moves culture. I don't think there is an agency or a media plan or a strategy deck that could claim to have had as much impact as Greta Thunberg has had with a cardboard sign and some conviction. She skipped school and she sparked an entire movement, Fridays for Future. And I think that that is the most powerful example of how that simplicity of conviction and the simplicity of just knowing that she should just get going just started to light a fire under all of us. She didn't start a campaign, but she started something much, much bigger than a campaign. So let's sort of do a little bit of a shift from storytelling to how we structure that sort of stuff. Because great design, it shows up in really weird and wonderful ways. And one of the things that I love about writing a book and then getting asked to talk about the book is it makes me look at the world. Like, how are people doing that? How do I stay optimistic about the world? It might look like a patch that Harley Davidson are giving away to people. It might look like a placard. It might look like a protest. What are the things that where design isn't just a solution, but it's a signal that aesthetic intelligence is being used in its broadest, boldest, most human form? And there are some amazing, amazing examples. So Raja Cook, he designed all of the symbols that we'll undoubtedly all have seen by heart, but I'd be amazed if we notice them for a long time, unless you happen to be a designer where you probably spend way too much time looking at them. But those icons for restrooms, elevators, phones, hospitals, he wasn't just making icons, but he was making access possible. I'd really love like spend some time geeking out and looking him up because the way he talks about the decisions that went into these signs unpack the level of the care and the attention to detail and the care and thought that are in each of the semiotics that underpin these signs. Really, really, really fascinating. A real leader in that world. And I think he's given the world a real shared language. Before emojis became the sort of the shared language that people have associated with since mobile phones, he's had this shared language for a lot longer. I think it cuts through so many language barriers. It cuts through signage systems. It's real power. It's design that's invisible because it works. One of my absolute heroes, Harley. If you are going to watch any other talks in your life, I'd go. He did a talk at Config 2 years ago, I think. One of the most powerful talks, one of the few talks that I've gone to in a design conference where every single person in the audience had tears in their eyes. I feel like I'm welling up right now. But he's got his current thing that he's doing right now in Iceland. One ramp, one man, one really big personal problem. He's in a wheelchair. And he's turned it into an opportunity to come up with solutions. He didn't launch a petition. He just started building things. He built a ramp, and then he built another ramp, and then he built another ramp, and he's now, I don't know, when I looked last, about 1,500, I think 1,600, maybe 700 ramps later, across Iceland. He's not raising the curves, but I think he's raising expectations of what access should look like. I think this is an example of design as civic justice. It's accessibility by default, it's visibility by design. The way he talks about it is really, really powerful and important for all of us to see. Another wonderful human being, Jennifer. She didn't ask permission about how to make a symbol or what the symbol should be made. She just made something that was missing, a black disabled Lives Matter mark. It is such a great example of lived experience being made visible by someone. It's not just design as messaging, but it's design as representation. I think it shows us how people at the margins often, when they get a chance to voice stuff, they can reshape the story at the center. And this was such an important moment in time a few years ago when Jennifer launched it. And I'd really encourage everyone to look her up. She's again another absolutely inspiring human being. Nature. I referenced biomimicry in that book so many times because nature has solved so many of our design problems. In my opinion, we just need to stop designing against it. There's an amazing initiative at the moment that's been going for some time. Sponge cities. It is such a brilliant example. They're not just reducing flood risk, but they're cooling cities. They're adding green space. They're improving well-being. It's not just they're not just using biomimicry, but it's real adaptive urban empathy, for lack of a better word. And it proves that you can scale weird ideas when they're the right when they're the right ones. There's a whole chapter in the book called Adapt where it unpacks how not every solution scales the same way. There isn't all those things you see that are like the playbook to scale your thing like this. Don't believe them because that's not how the world works. And sponge cities are a great example of looking at each situation and working out how do you solve that problem, not have sort of a cookie cutter approach for all problems. Pamela Bell. This has now just become like a gallery of my heroes. This shirt, it's not merchandise, but it's real memory. Pamela has turned wearable protest into a cultural shorthand. 1973, really, really important year. I'm not going to go into it because her putting the year on it doesn't tell you everything, but it makes people ask, and I think that is exactly the point that she does with all of her clothes. Design, it doesn't always need to explain. Sometimes the actual point of it is to invite inquiry, to get someone to ask that question. She's a really, really fantastic leader. I hope that she'll forgive me for sharing a really long quote that she gave. But one of the many things that she's shared that I think are really important, and if we can all imagine that I sound as cool as Pamela Bell always sounds when she's talking, she said, "When I first started, I went to a few venture capitalists who all said graphic tees don't sell. But I don't see them as graphic tees. I see them as a way for people, I see them as a way people could say who they were and what they were about." And I think that's such a great way of encapsulating the work that she's done. Her business is called Print Shop. I spent a bit of time looking at it. Everything in there has a really important message behind the message. And what I like about it is that she invites you to sort of explore that conversation on your own terms. Flat pack furniture. Holy macaroni. When IKEA came out with these sort of reimagined emergency housing solutions, they had solar panels, lockable doors, structures that could be deployed really, really easily. But most importantly, they had a system of giving people who needed help dignity. I think this is where design is at its best, where IKEA didn't just make shelters as cheaply as they could. They made real experiences that were more bearable and more respectful for people in the toughest of times. And I think this is where design speaks quietly, but it acts so loudly. And for design, it should always have dignity at the center of all the decisions that we're making. So, as I was putting this together, on this little coffee-fueled adventure, I realized something unusual. I was starting to pull out key beats of things I thought would be really interesting and stuff that I wanted to talk about, and I realized I'd accidentally written the early start of a manifesto. So very late last night, I put that manifesto together in a few sentences. Forgive me for the slight liberties that I've taken with my manifesto. So, this is my manifesto, friends. Design is not decoration, it's declaration. We don't make things pretty, we make things mean something. We build stories people can live in. We choose culture over campaigns. We make the weird feel normal and the normal feel new. We design for impact, for dignity, for change. This is the work, and this is the invitation. Let's use design to design change. This is the part where I sort of have to say pluggy stuff. But more importantly, thank you. Thank you, Katie. Thank you to everyone for listening to me ramble at 4 o'clock in the morning. My only real ask is when we start our next project, let's not start with the logo, with the finished thing, but let's start with the question. Does this need to feel weird or does it need to feel normal? And I think for me, that's aesthetic intelligence. That's design thinking, and that's how we get to move the world. If you ask the killer question and you get the book, I'm really keen for feedback. If you just decide you want to buy the book, it's just a cheap paperback. Buy the book. I'm always here for the feedback. I'll undoubtedly write about this talk. I would keep a little newsletter on LinkedIn. When I wake up properly. And while I'd love you to comment on the post, I'll be much more discreet about how I ask you to comment on the post. And I think we got some time for a Q&A. Oh, and there are two big links. I lead the creative team at a company called Zag, and the book, the course, all the stuff that I've just talked about, I keep track of it in this thing called Rogue School.
Brill. Oh, really enjoyed that. Right, you can stop sharing your screen so we can see your lovely face on a bigger
Oh,
view.
sorry
There
about
we
that.
go. Brilliant. So wow. Is anyone else speechless? That was so enjoyable. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
It's always a pleasure talking with you, James. I always learn so many new things and discover new people that I probably should have known about. So thank you for that. I think you've just lined up my next podcast guests. Um, right, so we go to the Q&A. Best question is chosen by James at the end. So we'll start off with John Worley. He says, um, James, how do you respond to those clients who eye roll as soon as you say story?
Interesting. Yeah, I was doing something just yesterday where I was talking about something very similar. I learned the hard way, and those eye rolls, they kill me. They're a real trigger. When in the earlier stage phases of my career, I would walk into the room and I just assumed that everybody gave a damn about the typeface choices, about the ink traps, about the shape of the bowl of the glyph that was really exciting about the treatment of that we would have in post for a particular art direction style. And those eye rolls, they would hit me hard. So I've got a new model of getting ready for a meeting, which I use to this day. I just call it burning platform, where whenever I'm going into a meeting with a client, I do all my design nerdery and geeking out over the decisions I want to make. But then the story that I tell, I spend a bunch of time thinking about what are the thing. I've got a framework that I've used for a really long time where if I'm answering a problem to someone, I call it my 5C framework. I think about the company, what is it that the company does? I think about the category, what category are they in? I think about their capabilities, what can they actually do? I think about culture, is there stuff that's happening politically or in technology that might have an impact on them? And I think about their community. If I can have, and I don't need to spend ages thinking about it, but I just sketch out the first things that I might think in those areas. And then before I meet the client, I work out what's the stuff that they're going to be the most worried about. How can I create a sense of urgency or a sense that there's a bit of a burning platform? And I found that if I turn up in the room and I talk about the thing that they might be talking about, and that sort of process sort of gives me the discipline to be really wide-eyed and look at the whole the spectrum of things I could be considering about when I think about that burning platform. It means I very rarely go in and talk to them about the story, but I talk to them about the thing that might be having an impact on the business, on the reason that they're even talking to a graphic designer. And then from that, I'll then say, great, the way for us to solve that burning platform is to tell this story. And then, it's not to say that I don't ever get eye rolls. I'm pretty sure there might be some eye rolls on this call right now. But then then I found that the land is a little bit more fertile to have that sort of conversation.
Brill. Thank you, John. I hope that answered your question. Evie's asking, how long will it take for beautiful, colourful, stylish design to find a place within the world of disability accessories, for example, wheelchairs, without costing the price of a car?
Yeah, I think we need to get there quickly, don't we? I think that there's a real culture of beginnerism in when people are designing for accessibility or trying to design in that world, they land in this very, very patronizing culture of beginnerism. I think it's incumbent on all of us to challenge that, to
Yeah.
ensure that we don't fall into that trap. And I'm starting to see it more and more. I wear glasses, and in the process of me making choices about glasses, you see how eyewear has really changed how it's communicating and what it's doing, and you're starting to see all of those different decisions sort of roll into slightly different areas. But I think we've got a long way to go because we still have that people saying, "Oh, it's got to feel like people understand it." So we use this like very neutral palette, and I think it's patronizing, but thankfully, lots of people are seeing that it's patronizing.
Great. Thank you, Evie. I hope that answered your question. Megan says, I'm in the process of redesigning my art business to focus on human experiences, resilience, and trauma through connections to the natural world. Amazing. Rather than running with one idea, I'm building a series of worlds, both online and offline, and narratives that I will utilize alongside my storytelling. So, my question is this: how do you decide what to share and when? When does a story become too much? I found that writing daily has helped me filter and process my ideas, but I would love to hear your input as well, James. Thank you.
Yeah, interesting. I think I don't think you can ever tell too many stories. I think as human beings, we're all hardwired both to tell them and to receive them. I think it's maybe thinking about the tools that you use to tell those stories. I've started to really, really nerd out on different things. There are two tools that have changed my life in the last month or so. I've become obsessed with a thing called Notebook LM, which is an AI thing from Google, where you can just put a bunch of Google Notes in there, and then I mean, it does lots of clever stuff, but the thing that I really like is you can press a button and it will generate a podcast. What I like about it is you can, it's hearing, if I'm trying to work my way through a problem, I'll put all of the stuff that I think about the problem into that. I'll click Notebook LM, and then hearing other people talk about it gives me a chance to reflect on it and say, oh, yeah, that's one way of understanding it and understanding how I'm going to articulate it. Another thing that I've just found about 2 weeks ago is a thing called Obsidian, which is again very, very similar. It's a journaling app. But what's cool about Obsidian is you can write all of your little notes and keep track of things, and then it will create these almost like word cloud clusters of themes in the stuff that you're talking about. So I'm still a relatively new Obsidian user, so my themes are pretty lightweight. But over time, I'm hoping that I'll start to see, these emerging trends in the stuff that I'm talking about.
Brilliant. Okay, I think that answers that nicely. Best of luck with your new venture, Megan. Um, Now we have Michael. How would you approach a stakeholder or client who would rather copy a design, a bad one, than listen to designers who are using not just skills and experience, but presenting actual user data, reports, etc., to show the benefits of creating a better alternative?
Yeah, I think this is maybe one of the knock-on effects of this AI world that we've moved into, actually, that there are many clients now who think, well, I've just made this mid-journey image. I know how to design. And there's a level of confidence that is coming, I've noticed in some of the conversations where people are saying, "Oh, I use this tool to make this thing. Can you just make this thing, designer person?" And I think that's why that point that I led with about design isn't the cherry on top, but it's the whole cake. I think that's what's incumbent on all of us to actually live. But by actually adding value, by showing that there is value in that whole cake, how do we say to that client who's asking us to make a bit of design that we know is not quite right, giving them the reassurance that we are going to be the aesthetic guide through that conversation, that there's a level of taste or there's a level of understanding of how to understand the problem, that's going to help them be better in whatever work that they're doing. And my advice is always, and I think this goes back to the previous answer actually, I'd try and work out what is it that the client will see as success, and how do you understand that, and then articulate it in a way that they'll listen. People tend not to listen to the design, or they certainly don't listen to me about the design decisions, but what they do listen to is me telling them what the problem is and how design is going to give them an unfair advantage or help them look better or help them solve whatever it is that they're trying to do.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. Katie asks, and she thanks you for the presentation. What I wanted to know is, how do you create stories or explore the ideas that don't cross that fine line from a rebellious messaging into patronizing messaging?
How do I explore stories that don't cross that fine line from rebellious to patronizing? Um, Interesting. I think that the danger is that whenever we tell any story, there will always be people. There is the level. Okay, I know what the answer is actually. The level of what we think is patronizing, I think, changes based on the audience that we're talking to. So if I was talking to a book publisher and I said, "Oh, right, I've got a bunch of different ways that we should redesign this book," they will have a level of context and a level of understanding that they'll see my naive sort of suggestions as really, really patronizing. But if I was to take the same conversation to I don't know, someone who makes, I'm just picking objects off the table, someone who makes bottles, then they would say, "Oh, right, okay, maybe there's something meaningful in the way that you're thinking about publishing that book." So I definitely think about who the audience is that you're talking to is really, really important about whether or not you're talking about rebelliousness or patronizing, or if you're talking about the real meaning of rebellion and patronizing. Um, I would say that that's the tough thing. I don't think that you can ever sugarcoat a patronizing story. I don't think that you can ever say, "Oh, this is a patronizing thing. Let's make it seem rebellious." I actually think that makes it even more patronizing. So I think it's also being like candid, and radical candor goes a long way. We've all had to work on things which we sort of have to blur our eyes a little bit, and we're like, right, okay, and the world needs this, really? Okay, this is how we can make this feel nice. And sometimes that's what we got to do. Graphic design is a job where people employ us to do their bidding a little bit. We all have to make our own ethical decisions about, do we want to use our skills with whoever it is that we might be talking to. But I do think it's emperor's new clothes thinking can often be the death knell for a project. If we try and take a really pedestrian idea, we try and make it seem really radical and exciting, people smell the bullshit. So I'd always like avoid that sort of stuff.
Brilliant. Thank you, Katie. Catherine asks, there's a growing trend of brands leaning into social causes like mental health and community connection, but they still exist to sell something at the end of the day. Do you ever find that space tricky to work in? How do you keep the intent of the design aligned with genuine impact?
No, I always really champion when a big, complicated organization leans into a cause. I always really, really champion it. I used to work at Google, and Google have a massive organization, google.org, which leans into tons and tons and tons of really fantastic organizations. I think that's a great example of a business. The Google, any company they don't need to spend money doing that sort of stuff. But of course they do it for lots of different reasons. Part of it, they do it because it helps them more broadly in society. It helps them if they're in a big antitrust case. It helps them if they're, doing different things. There are selfish reasons why companies are doing it, but there are also good reasons why companies should be doing it, which are that they've got the money, they've got the resources, they've got the clout to do that sort of stuff. So in my opinion, and I'm definitely guilty of doing this probably a little too much, I will often try to wheedle in the impact a business can have that's positive for the world, and making my sort of, using whatever influence I've got to try to steer the dollars and the focus on having a positive impact, knowing that for me, the net impact that I'll have in my life will be to try to help these businesses see, sometimes tell them a beautiful story, often around this is what the world will think of you if we do these things. Because I think that it is the right thing to do. And I think sometimes that's the important thing to hold on to. Sometimes it's okay for us to just use our clout or our influence in the room to help a business do the right thing.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's lovely. And Catherine, I hope that answered your question. John Worley on the chat says design has the power to turn up or turn down the volume control of businesses. We have a responsibility to choose carefully who we turn up. Sebi asks, have you found any particular hiccups when trying to steer someone into either weird or normal directions? How do you solve that? Is the key for you finding the right cultural fits for you, or do you take the challenges as they come? Ha ha ha. Sorry, somebody writes it. I have to say it.
Well, I think we can make sure that everybody puts a funny ha 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 on the end of their questions.
Oh
Um,
gosh, don't.
yeah, all the time. The reality is, if you every business that I look at and I've thought, oh, that's just a really normal business, and my job is to make it more interesting. You've got to be very careful ever telling the client or the team that you're working with that that's the case, because people never think that. That doesn't gel well with people. Everyone thinks they're the vanguard, rabble rouser, troublemaker. new, innovative sort of idea that no one's ever heard of before. And then you, as the person that's coming in to help them with something, you're looking and you're like, really? You make pen lids? Or, you're you're trying to sort of work out where how to hold on to that. And one of the things that I've learned through the way that I work, I'll often do the thinking in my head to work out, right, am I trying to make something really old feel new? So I worked on loads of banks and money things. Banking, one of the oldest industries in town. The teams I've worked with on those projects, every single one of them have felt like they're redesigning society, culture, the world around whatever the product is that we might be talking about. And my job is to meet them where they are with that enthusiasm, but in the background say, right, well, we all know what banks are, we all know what money is, we all know how these things work. I've just got to find a new way of articulating that. Like I've got to take that energy and I've got to find it in a new way. But I've also worked on brand new things, a whole bunch of brand new products that I'm not entirely sure what I'm allowed to talk about or not, but a bunch of new things that are very new and exciting ways that we're going to use technology. My job is to take those new things and make them feel like they've been around for as old as time. And again, I would never say that to the client, the client. I might say it to the teams I'm working with, but I'd never say it to the client because the client don't want to hear, oh, you're going to make us seem really pedestrian. But in my head, I know that that is how we're going to make this idea land. That's how we're going to help people sort of get familiar with the idea, so they know how to use it and what to do with it.
Brill. Thanks, Sebi. Michaela says, as a designer, I love seeing how creativity enhances ads, but at the same time, I struggle with it because in the end, they are ads and the final goal is selling a product. It feels like creativity, the best of humans, is exploited for profit and capitalism, the worst of humans. I worked for years in advertising and I really struggled to make peace with this. I felt proud and ashamed at the same time. Do you feel this too?
Ah, yes. Let's run away and like jump into an island somewhere. I'm ready to swim society now. Absolutely. I went to Cannes years and years ago, probably I don't know how many years ago, far too many years ago, when Cannes was a real festival of creativity. It was a bunch of designers, and we just got excited. It was tiny. It wasn't anything like it is today. And then I went to Cannes about it was when I was working at Pinterest, so it's probably about 4 years ago ish, and I could not believe it. It was so horrendous, and it was so horrendous for lots of different reasons. One of them was all of these massive tech companies that are like sort of it was like I don't know, it was like some old like Tumblr blog had been like splurred over this beautiful city, and in my opinion, think that that is a really, really sad sign. I think it was when Cannes had just launched the glass lines, the sort of the doing good work. And you saw the amount of virtue signaling that was going on, the number of brands that were sort of entering their sort of submission. And you could see that it wasn't because they really believed. I think the winning entry for the year that I was there was someone had and I could be misremembering it, this, so don't quote me on it exactly. But I think someone had somehow made something in a reef, a coral reef, to spell something out and then taken a photo from space that's I can't remember what it said, but it said something that for some reason with a Google satellite they could see it from space and stuff. And my heart sank. I was like, wow, the amount of destruction that went into making this idea happen is sickening and really, really sad. So yeah, it pisses me off that the when brands try to do some sort of virtue signaling, and then when we as an industry start to laud and hold up those ideas, and thankfully there are lots of people like you and I out there who are dismissive of that, and I think we should all like really question that. Doing good for a brand should be actually doing good, in my opinion. If I was talking to a CMO and we had a dollar or a pound to spend, I'd always encourage the CMO to spend that pound on doing good. Like, how can they use their muscle to do good? So builds culture rather than a campaign is a line that I've used many times with CMOs. Uh, A, because I think it's stickier and I think it sort of stands the test of time longer. And B, because it means that you can then start to think about ways of leveraging that CMO's checkbook to actually do something that's going to be better. If that ad for the playgrounds where people had used the billboards to create goalposts and to create a slide. If you have a look, they're in Turkey. If you look at the areas that those billboards are in, they needed some love. Like it's a really, really powerful way of seeing how a brand can do something really, really good and do something really positive. So the brand gets their campaign was called Dirt is Good. The brand gets a great big storytelling device out of it, and my goodness, have they milked it? If you start Googling, you'll see how much they've milked it. But those communities also get, I think, they get a bit of a facelift, and they get something that hopefully is going to make their lives better. And I think that's where creativity is at its best. But I'd say that not being blind to the fact there's so much virtue signaling, and there are so many examples where brands do something to a coral reef, which is where I think creativity is at its worst.
Great. I hope that answered your question, Michaela. Fife says you spoke briefly about AI. As AI and automation are reshaping society, I want to know, should there be regulatory frameworks for how design can be used to drive change? And if so, what would they look like? That's a big question.
Such an easy question to answer.
Oh, really?
I've got no idea. Um,
We should ask ChatGPT.
yeah. Um, yeah, AI. What a funny world we're living in. I think that I really think, first of all, there are some important rods that I've got in the sand. One of them is I think AI is a really, really powerful tool. I built an AI tool when I was working at Google probably 2 years ago. I'll tell a story about how that tool came about. I think that may be interesting. I was working, actually, it was when I was working at Pinterest. Someone introduced this idea of fuzzy logic. When someone is, we at Pinterest, loads and loads of images, we had a real issue showing people the image that they were actually searching for. Someone introduced something called fuzzy logic, where if you type in the word green, you don't just show green things, but you have a bit of fuzzy logic which understands that grass is also green. So maybe someone's looking for a garden. So fuzzy logic sort of lets you sort of look for things at the side of what people are looking for, and there's lots of great stuff about it. I learned about fuzzy logic, and I got really excited about trying to create a talking book. And with an engineer friend of mine, we spent about a year really like butchering a version of this book, ironically, to try to make a thing that you could go to and you could just have a conversation. It didn't work. We wasted a year of our lives, but it was a good chance to have a few beers every few weeks. Then, fast forward a couple of years, I started to work at Google, and they had this AI thing called Bard, and I was like, kept badgering people like, "Oh, can I like play with Bard? Can I play with Bard?" I used it, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's my talking book. That's what I want to do with the talking book." And for me, they were so because that was my introduction to AI. It's been a really big unlock to see the potential in what AI can do, and since then, I think almost immediately set up a thing called future cards, which is essentially now it's really dated. It was really popular for about 2 minutes, but like all AI things, it's become very. I don't know whether anyone ever uses it anymore. I've not checked for a while, but it's essentially a Mad Libs game where in the background, it's you're writing a big prompt and then it's sending that prompt. I think it's now using ChatGPT, but back then it was using a different thing from Microsoft called semantic kernel. It would go back to the AI engine. It would give the carefully constructed prompt through this Mad Lib sort of exchange, and it would come back with some goods. And it was really powerful a couple of years ago. Now you can do way more powerful stuff just using ChatGPT. And so for me, I think AI is a really powerful, useful tool. I use it all the time. I use it as a sparring partner. I use it to stress test ideas. I use it to push myself. I use it to give me a quick like sense check on are there like things I should investigate more? Are there things I don't know about? But for me, AI is about the deductive thinking. If I'm trying to like deduce something, AI is really, really powerful. People send me like massive decks all the time with loads of audience research, website data, stuff. I use AI to just give me the crib notes of what it is that's in the documents that people have sent me because it gives me the chance to just focus on the stuff that I love doing. I love sitting around drawing stuff. And the thing that AI is terrible for, and the thing that I'm really surprised that people are using it so much for, is the inductive stuff. That's the thing I said right at the beginning. I really mean it. The human creativity, I think, is sacred. The ability to intuit what the answer should be isn't because it's necessarily in our head. It's often because it's something in our heart. And if we're really good at what we do, it's often because we've then got the confidence in the way we use our hands to do something that's going to make something worth making. AI doesn't have that ability. AI has the ability it's really good at the head stuff. It's really good at giving you an opinion and a smart thing. It's really good at sort of spewing out stuff, but if you don't know what the stuff is, that doesn't mean it's good. It just means you've made something that looks, I don't know, not shit. I would really encourage people to use AI to do the deductive stuff, but then use yourself, use your lived experience, use your gut, use your emotional responses to have use that intuition to think inductively about what a solution should be. And then you have the unfair advantage. Oh, Katie, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I was trying not to interrupt. I get carried away sometimes. Aglue asks, how would you approach a project where the client or company wants to produce a good campaign or initiative while the backbone of their business remains very much on the greenwashing or whatever washing they are doing side?
Yeah, I'd probably use the influence that it depends on the relationship that you have with the client. I would, in the types of relationships that I would have, I would use it's tough. I lead a creative team at an agency. We've got to make sure that we can pay everyone's wages at the end of each month. So you've always got to be careful about how much truth to power you speak. But I would definitely want to work out, can I use our influence in the room, because we're often working with the leadership teams of the companies that we're working with, to speak truth to power. If people are asking us to do some greenwashing, the burning platform that I might use is the reputational risk of them trying to use some greenwashing, I think outweighs the risk of them actually investing in doing something more positive for the planet or for society, whatever the angle is that might be more appropriate for them. So whenever a brief comes across my desk and you can smell the greenwashing or the virtue signaling very, very quickly, I'll often use that as a chance to say, great, the intent is evidently to do good. I think it's that maybe it's a lack of awareness about how to actually use the influence that they might have to actually do good. So I'll probably use it as a learning exercise, but again, that's a really, really tricky and dicey conversation to have, because people sometimes they know that it's just virtue signaling or they know that it's just greenwashing, but that's they can be the number of people that you meet and you're like, oh, right, I thought that there was more sort of shared awareness as human beings about how the world is going. But haven't we all learned over the last few years how little shared awareness there can be between different human beings? Um, uh, uh, if people ask me to do stuff that I don't believe in, I'm really lucky that we're in a position where I can say no to work, so we can sort of walk away from projects, and we do walk away from projects, and I've walked away from plenty of projects where you can see that the people that you're working with are just working with someone like James Hurst just because they want to like say something that makes them sound good, but they don't actually want to do anything that makes them be good. And for me, the actions speak way louder than the words.
Okay, we've got two more questions to get through, and these are all brilliant. So I'm going to have to speed you up a little bit. We've got maybe like another 5 minutes. Abhinav asks, how do you communicate the weird better in order to make folks realize that it's actually gold dust and politely steer them towards choosing the weird instead of making the logo bigger? I guess what I mean is clients always have a fear of trying something new, let alone something weird. How to close the communication gap in those cases? Thank you.
Yeah, so that 5C framework that I mentioned in the chat, company culture, that framework, which I can shout about and share if anyone ever wants to know about it. I'll probably use that to work out what is the right lever to use to give people will switch off immediately. If you come out straight out with a weird idea, you'll get dismissed in the room. You need to build confidence. You need to earn the right to have the weird idea in the room. So I'd always start with the stuff that lets people see what lets people see that you understand their business, you understand their problem, and then I'd work out what's the right lever out of that 5C research that you do to use to be the floor or the foundation for whatever that weird idea is. But always lead with the stuff that's going to invite them to lean in and invite them to listen to you first.
Brill. And then Nick, our final question. Lots of the projects you mentioned have a strong social or environmental purpose, but have projects like that become harder to push in the current political climate in the US? Oh,
Big question. I'd I don't think so. If anything, I actually think they've become more important to push in the US. Like all things, like all people, I live in a bubble, and San Francisco is a bubble within a bubble. The bit of San Francisco I live in happens to be a bubble within a bubble. So I know that I'm three bubbles deep now, and I'm a designer within a bubble, within a bubble, within a bubble.
what's
So
that film?
yeah. So the conversations I have and the people I speak with all share the same frustrations about the same things, and we become our own echo chamber to talk about some stuff. I intentionally try to get outside of that bubble and intentionally try to do things that force me to get out of that mindset to go and meet people who don't do that. Not because I'm pitching work to them, but just because I think it's important to grow, to learn and grow. And the thing that is interesting right now, the mindset across some of the people that I've got to speak to over the last few months in particular, I think there's a real shared anxiety and there's a real impact on life in America. Stuff has got notably more expensive in the last 100 days. And there is a real anxiety about savings, stocks and shares. Lots of people in America will blend their retirement savings or be cash and equity or cash and shares. Share portfolios are really, really common here. They've all dropped. They've not dropped by 1 or 2%. They've dropped by like 10, 15, 20%. There is a really big impact on people, and people are feeling that in their pockets. And that means that the conversations about what, are, is not like whether you're like where your political allegiances might lie. As human beings, everyone can sort of feel it. People willing to take the risk to put their head above the parapet. I think everyone's a bit nervous about that. So I think there's lots of conversation about the anxiety. There's lots of reticence about being people like wanting to be the poster child for whatever the cause is. Nobody wants to be the person that gets caught up in something silly right now. So it's about being realistic about how and what there are like universal truths. Climate change, it's having an impact. America, we're seeing it all over the place. I live in California. There are wildfires every year. We're just about to hit what? No, we're just about to hit wildfire season. We know that there will be we all saw what happened in LA. That happens around San Francisco every single year, and it's happened every single year since I've been here as a direct result of climate change. People are the literacy around the impact of life is really, really rich here. It's much easier to have conversations with brands to say, I think we should use your brand to address this thing because it will help either raise our awareness of climate change or help raise our awareness of clean water or help raise because people are faced with those conversations on a really daily basis.
Oh, well, this was fantastic. And I'm really sorry, Sally, I didn't get to ask your question. We really are running out of time. So now you've got to choose your best question, James, and then we pick a winner.
Oh my days. I
And
love all of
can you
them.
see it?
I can't actually see that. I'm not entirely sure
So
where I.
you open the Q&A, which is the box linked at the bottom of the Zoom,
Oh, I
and
see
then
it.
there should be answered. Can we have a lecture series from James? Asks George. You up for that?
Oh, George, well, you should ask my wife what that feels like. I think we should go with the very first question. The first question, I can't remember. Was it Megan's question?
John Worley, was it? How do you respond to those clients who eye roll? Or was it Megan who was asking a question about her venture? How do you decide what to share and when you're telling a story? When does a story become too much?
Let's go with John. How do you respond to those clients who eye roll as you say story?
Well
John, there are
done,
so many
John.
stories in here.
Well done, John. If you stay with us, send me a message, provide your email address, and I will sort that out and put you both in touch. Fantastic. Thanks so much, everybody. Oh, somebody's raising their hand. How do I respond to that? Oh, it's gone. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, James, for getting up at 4 in the morning to deliver what has been a brilliant talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, friends.
See you all soon, everyone.
Bye.
Take care. Thanks, James. Go back to bed.
All right, fine. I'm on it.
We'll catch up. Yeah.
All right.
All right, love.
Speak you
See
soon.
you in
Oh,
a
I don't know
bit.
where Zoom's gone. Oh, there it is. Speak to you soon. Bye bye.
Take care, love. Bye.